Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shah. It's a wonderful day here in Trinidad and Tobago. A bit depressing though, because this morning, fortunately my co-host and colleague is with us. The unfortunate part is that we cannot have his lively enthusiasm and the wonderful character that he brings to the show in studio because he's joining us virtually via Zoom. Good morning, Sean. It's good to see you nevertheless.
Good morning, Keaton. I find it interesting that you describe me as lively and enthusiastic. Was it? I can't remember the exact words. When I am the Debbie Downer of the duo, usually poo-pooing your happy-go-lucky good news to start off the morning.
The depression,
it's a wonderful morning.
The depression, my friend, only kicks in during your introduction. I mean, once we get past that, usually we see a lot more enthusiasm and passion from you as we get into those topics.
Well, I mean, that's actually kind of interesting because I feel as though with the obvious elephant in the room, there are a few stories that I think both you and I could get very passionate about. The elephant I'm talking about, I guess we should still give it some mention before we start, and that is the murder rate, the amount of shooting, gun violence just over the last 24 hours. Again, it's hard to say, okay, this is definitely the worst we've ever seen, because we've seen some bad days, right? But just looking at some of the articles in one of the daily newspapers that I know traditionally will not give you the same number of crime reports as the other two. And I was kind of in shock, both by the amount that newspaper would report and just the sheer number of shootings, individual different shootings. We're not talking about a group of people involved in one shooting. We're talking about multiple various shootings. And again, it does not look, I could be wrong, but I have a hard time believing this is all just gangsters killing gangsters. So to what extent is this private citizens being preyed upon by either hardened criminals or desperate people? It's hard to tell.
I think it's a mixture of both. I think the criminal elements that existed before, right? Because we must understand and accept that criminality has been a part of our everyday lives for many years now. I think they've become so confident and at the same time so brave, which I suppose is basically the same thing, that the system down here, to a certain extent, one can make the argument, allows for crime to take place. We have a caller on the line with us almost every day stating that law and order is not enforced.
Yes.
TNT has laws. They're actually not enforced. No, there's no proactive measures in terms of crime. Private entities, private homes are a lot more proactive rather than national security elements. So one can certainly make the argument, and I'll be very honest with you, it is in my opinion that the way the system is down here and the way things have been taking place, it seems as though criminal activity is allowed. It seems as though it's just a free-for-all. And then you have desperate individuals now, given our economic climate, and yes, though TNT is not as bad as other nations around the world, even first world nations, the United Kingdom Central Bank is predicting recession for the last 3 months of 2022. There are fears of recession in the United States due to the economy not growing, the economy actually shrinking. Down here in TNT, we still have been stable for whatever reasons. Thank God for it. But that does not mean that it is easy. It's very difficult for people out there, and the level of desperation, as you mentioned, that we're seeing now, is a huge factor, or probably the biggest factor, when it comes to criminal activity in TNT, and citizens turn into a life of crime.
Mm-hmm. I'll always go back to the point that I like to harp on. We have an unnatural balance point because we're used to the corruption. We might not even realize or acknowledge consciously in our brains where there is corruption and not just violent crime and big shots stealing money from the treasury or any sorts of accusations like that, but just how various public servants might operate or they might not operate. I mean, how many times you hear the story, in order to get your stuff done, your paperwork done, your approval done, to get the form signed or the stamp on the form that you need to move forward, you might have to grease the wheel somehow, right? And that's not anything new with regards to the world and humanity. That's not unique to us, but especially in a place where the ease of doing business is not so hot, right? You have a lot of little laws that just fall by the wayside for various reasons, and we get accustomed to that. But when you're accustomed to that, you lose respect for the rule of law. Because, hey, I mean, look, we doing this, we do that, it's fine. Ah, you're speeding, it's fine. Don't mind people, of course, die from speeding, all the time. But then now, and I guess this is a good way to segue into our first story. When we don't respect our laws, we lose a little bit of respect for the rule of law, as well as we lose a little bit of respect for the TTPS. That's compounded by recent news. That's compounded by all of the accusations, whether rightfully or wrongfully. But the problem is, because the system is broken and is not efficient, the police have a hard time even clearing themselves, because investigations take so long and the public trust is not necessarily there. So recently, it was reported that the Attorney General, amongst others, withdrew an appeal that the government had with regards to the court ruling against them in a matter against the media house, saying that the warrants obtained were, let me get the specific wording, plainly irregular, unlawful, and unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And this actually reminds me of the Adrian School matter, when you would think to some extent, that investigation should be an open and shut case. Was there political interference in that one? I don't know. In this case now, we have a media house being investigated because they wrote, or at least it is believed it is because they had a story on the then acting commissioner of police at the time. And this, I don't know if this might have been some sort of retaliation, or if there was something about the source that the police very much wanted to have. It's just that the manner they went after it, particularly since, again, this is the fourth estate. This is supposed to be one of the pillars to ensure objectivity, to ensure impartiality, to ensure fairness in our society. So we're at an interesting time where all of the excesses we had in the past that we got, we were able to get by with, we were able to sweep under the rug. Now all of these things we're seeing where it doesn't necessarily work out very well when the system is under strain, the system is in trouble. So now,
well, Sean,
I'm thankful for this happening, because at least it shows that somebody is looking out for the rights of the media, who hopefully is looking out for the rights of citizens.
The thing is, when you speak about the system not functioning as it should be, the other aspect is that parts of the system seem to be attacking each other. It seems like an autoimmune disease. They're just attacking each other, because here you have, you have the three forms of government. You've got the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, right? And then you have various arms outside of that, which are not part of government, but are, as you mentioned, supposed to ensure transparency, accountability. You got, for example, the media house that was named in this particular lawsuit, as well as the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago. That in itself, as you mentioned, is the fourth estate. But then I look at other arms as well. I look at the Law Association, and I see the government, and I see the opposition as well, very much. Whenever the Law Association may not be in their favor, it seems as though it's an attack against them. So now this was an attack against the media house. And the reason why I'm using such language is because, according to the judge, it seems as though the justice of the peace who granted the warrants seemingly did not see the holes in the warrants that he actually granted. In fact, the judge, Justice Ramsey Prasad, he indicated plainly that the search was illegal and unconstitutional, and he ordered the state to pay compensatory damages to the media house as well as legal costs, of which we do not know. But when the judge said that the state presented no evidence that either the newspaper or Rene was under suspicion of committing any illegal act, one, who requested the warrants? Because obviously we know the police was the one who have had to go for the warrants. But who gave the instructions that we need the warrant? Two, for what purpose were you claiming? You stated that you needed evidence into certain alleged criminal activity. That never transpired. So was it really, did somebody step on somebody's bones and they didn't like it? They didn't like it at all. So this entire mixture of nonsense and loopholes transpired, in which now the state had to withdraw its appeal and then at the same time pay compensatory damages. So again, who's losing out?
I think that there's a problem in our society where the authorities, whether it's political figures, government figures, police, whatever investigative body, public-facing bodies, tend to just throw accusations out there or act on theories. And it's almost as though to an outsider looking on, they haven't necessarily thought this through. You know, it's just business as usual. This is what we've always done, right? We go in attack mode, and in some cases, I think it's purposeful. Politically speaking, you know, sometimes you can't unhear an accusation, and whether it's true or not, it does paint the accused in a bad light, and we've seen that politically over and over, because most of what politicians say about each other, about the other side rather, you know, does anything come out of those things? No. So we have a whole set of various people just going off half-cocked, not really having any consideration to, hey, what is proper in this situation? I can't just go and make wild accusations. I can't just go and say whatever I want to say. We have the reverse of that. And what we're seeing now, I would think, at least with regards to the TTPS, because to me, that's what this investigation was. They just went off half-cocked, not necessarily with the best idea of what they were necessarily doing. And their target was the media. So now the law is looking at that and saying, well, hold on. There have to be some kind of limits here. Otherwise, you know, our society is going to risk going downhill very fast. As much as you might not like the media, I would argue that it still serves the basic purpose that it needs to serve, because both sides of the political spectrum basically calls out the media for bias, which means to me, I would imagine most of the media is okay.
Sean, back in 2020, we had a different Attorney General, and it is the current Attorney General that withdrew the appeal of the state. I mean,
that could be part of it, yes.
Yes, and I'm just actually wondering if it's a different view in terms of legal opinion that caused the withdrawal, because, the justice said that there was no evidence on the part of the state. So obviously the Attorney General said, well, listen, this doesn't make sense. It makes you wonder, what was the last Attorney General thinking?
I could, as much as I have decried Faris Awari as not being a good Attorney General, I could easily see where he would make the same decision. Right? It does not take that much effort to realize this is a dead end. And this did not make sense.
So then why appeal it in the
legal
first
justification of this? Because I believe they did business as usual. Let's put it this way. The implications of this is now we have to question with regards to how law enforcement goes about requesting warrants, and how justice of the peace or judiciary members, etc., go about granting warrants. That's really the question that we take away here. Because can we safely assume this situation is a one-off in isolation? I don't think so. Because there have been other situations, not necessarily over warrants, but other situations of law enforcement overreach where the victim, the person who was persecuted, sued the state and won. Most notably, I believe every now and then there will be unjust imprisonment or something with regards to that, where the individual walk away with $100,000 or a couple $100,000 easy, or unjust arrest, or how they were treated when they were arrested.
But Sean, this can't be business as usual, because if it is, hold on, no, because I hear the point that you're making, but my counterpoint would be it can't be business as usual. We just appealing it because it's probably in our best interest if we do. Then we realize, okay, the judge is saying we have no evidence, so let's pull out. Okay, fine. Let's look at it from another angle. If it's business as usual, why not appeal the ANV oil and gas and Petrotrin case?
Well, because it is alleged that there are specific interests there that would have changed. I mean, ANV is a very funny case. It's a very funny case because the lines traditionally were crossed. There's speculation that the government had interests with the defendant and the opposition was basically, how to say it, they were riling up on behalf of the states, technically the state's position, right? So similar to what we saw with when the debate with regards to how then Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith, the end of his contract was being managed or handled, right? The roles were swapped between the opposition and the government. So that's definitely not business as usual. But what I will say with this is, think about it. What does the government do? Somebody makes a mistake and overreaches when they do something with regards to enforcement, with regards to a warrant, searches, with regards to an arrest, etc. It goes to court. However, it's challenged. The state loses because they didn't have a case to start on, but they didn't necessarily consider that when they started. They appeal. Why? Because they don't want to look like they were wrong. Unfortunately, fortunately, the appeal doesn't always work. And to me, I have to wonder how much of that is business as usual. The ANV case, that is its own separate thing that is very, very strange.
The office of the Attorney General, it has not become, it is, the office of the Attorney General is just another avenue of manipulation for government interest, which may not necessarily be the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. I think that's what we've seen over the last few years. And make the argument, we saw it under the People's Partnership as well. But in these times, 7 years have gone, and we're looking, to what's going to happen tomorrow.
That is why Karen has now more than once said, perhaps the role of the AG needs to be split or modified in some way, because there's a bit of a conflict of interest when, one, he is the government's lawyer, but two, he is the people's lawyer. The problem is, what happens when those two interests aren't aligned? And we take it for granted that those two interests will be aligned. But from a technical standpoint, from a unemotional, unbiased standpoint, it doesn't even have to be adversarial interests. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like totally opposing interests. But at the end of the day, the government is the government. The people are the people. There will always be the chance that those two things will not be 100% in alignment. Even if the government is completely benevolent, those things could always come up. And I guess this is just one more time where we could say, A, constitutional reform, but B, perhaps the AG needs to be significantly adjusted, because, there's too many problems, I think, now with regards to questions being raised about the AG's office, the role, the effectiveness, how they carry out their job. And yeah, it is what it is, though. All of these things, they look bad. Going back to my original point, all of these things, people, they might not be consciously aware of all the technicalities, but they're subconsciously aware of the fact that, hey, this doesn't look right. Something is wrong here. And I think the cynical ones of us it just looks like a joke. And then it's real hard to take our laws seriously, to take our law enforcement seriously, when a lot of these things just end up being like a joke.
Sean, at the end of the day, and I think you mentioned this yesterday, with everything that is happening in TNT, when one controversy transpires and when one allegation arises, it may last for a couple of days, then something else comes up, we forget about the last one, then something else comes up, we forget about that one. And that is essentially what is happening now. There's so many controversies, so many allegations. Our society is in a state of decay and decline, and nobody wants to admit it. For whatever reason, nobody has the gonads to admit it, as somebody would say. It's unfortunate, but I don't think that we should shy away from that. For as long as we shy away from that, what are we doing? We're just ignoring a bleeding wound. So hopefully, as we mentioned last week, the younger generation will make the change. For now, we need
to start from now, Keaton.
Sure, but Sean,
we need to start from now.
Of course, we needed to start since yesterday. We needed to start since yesterday. But guess what? Today's another day that we just wake up with hope. Do we end the day with hopelessness, or do we end the day with
every nation looks at things like this, and it's basically Everest. And it's not. You're not going to climb it in your lifetime. What you're going to do is you're going to start, and you're going to put the stakes in the ground so that somebody behind you will have an easier time to try to go up their part of the mountain until we have it all passed out all the way to the top and somebody can make it to the top. But we have to start putting in that work now.
I wonder who is that going to be? Who is that going to be? Anyway,
the problem is most people don't really get rewarded for that kind of work. Who gets rewarded? The people who achieve, right? But society does not look at the foundation layers usually in the same way that it looks at the people who actually finish the job. And in politics, you only have so many years, right? We don't have a prime minister who's in his 30s that's going to be there, and we might not want it, by the way, but one who's going to be there for 30 years to kind of see this through the long haul. Our prime ministers are there in chunks of 5 years or 4 years or whatever, and if they get 3 terms, they're lucky. Right? The opposition leader has so far only had 1. It's not easy to be prime minister. So what happens? They concentrate on short-term things to leave their mark. Short-term projects, not long-term thinking.
I guess that's blindness, Sean. That's just blind, short-sightedness. It's the best way to describe it. Anyway, folks,
it's not unique to us. It's not unique to us.
Nevertheless, even though it's not unique to us, that is no excuse. Anyway, folks, let's take a break here on the program. When we return, we would be due to welcome our guest very shortly. Hopefully, he is with us in the platform. Stay tuned to Talking Point, and when we return, well, the conversation continues.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fanzone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy our treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. Keaton Shaw with you, and Sean Michael Small is with us, thankfully, via Zoom this morning. Sean, the issue of the theft of metals across Trinidad and Tobago, because at this point, we're not even referring to it as scrap metals, it's just metals across Trinidad and Tobago, is it the new crime on the block? You know, is it just a new thing that is becoming so and so brazen that, like, yesterday we heard from the Ministry of Works and Transport that steel was stolen from one of their yards in Carney, right? It was fabricated in order to create an inspection bay at Rice Road in Port of Spain. Now, the police were able to use CCTV footage and track the steel to a yard in Canoopia, Monroe Road, Canoopia. They were able to get back the steel, and the owner of that yard is assisting police with the investigations. But once more, this is not even scrap metal we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So at what point in time is it now that thieves are going to start targeting, guess what, homes for metals? At what point in time is that going to start taking place? Because it's becoming, as I said, the new crime on the block.
Well, I think I remember reading the president of DOMA saying that their burglar proofing, they had a gate, they had a security gate at the front of a business, and that was more or less stolen. And we know, of course, in TNT, a lot of people have, you know, whether it's a front gate, whether it's a gate in, just before their front door, burglar proofing on their windows. There's a lot of metalwork just on the outside of a house that could potentially be taken. Ironically, that's meant to secure you. That might be the target. Is it a trend? I think so. I remember when kidnapping was all the rage, and you had every Tom, Dick, and Harry seemingly looking to kidnap someone.
Kidnap for ransom, yeah.
Right, except in most of those cases, what happened? It was While it was amateurs who did it, they went after random people, some of whom children who managed to escape. The fire died relatively quickly as fast as it started. With regards to scrap metal, and we need to understand that while the scrap metal dealers, yes, to some extent they have to be held responsible. It's not as though they themselves are going out and taking the metal. Where they have to be held responsible is in the fact that they need to be a bit more careful on the source of what they're buying, right? I'm sure, at some point your parents would have told you to beware about somebody who's looking to just sell you something maybe for cheap or sell you something that seems to be too good to be true. Where these I-beams came from, did he realize that they were fishy, the owner of the scrapyard in this situation? I don't know.
Well,
but
sure.
given the climate, I would hope that he would be more careful.
Well, it's so ironic, that in TNT now, the burglars are able to steal burglar proofing. That's where we're at, But anyway, joining us now to continue this conversation, as mentioned earlier, our guest for this morning is the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Scrap Iron Dealers Association, Mr. Alan Ferguson. He's with us on the telephone line. Good morning, Mr. Ferguson. Welcome to the program.
Good morning to you and good morning to your guests.
Sir, thank you very much for joining us once more. I want to just go back a little bit to July the 21st. You said that the association was in a fighting mood. But exactly what are you all fighting? Are you all fighting for the government to not scrap the scrap iron industry as was headlined before? Or is it that you're fighting within yourselves to ensure that news headlines of what we saw yesterday does not become a norm?
Well, you could look at it in different issues, but sometimes it has different issues we fighting for, because this is an industry. It comes like it's new to Trinidad based on a lot of people information. I could tell you, it's since 2012, 13, we have been fighting for this industry to regularize. And if you look at countries around the world, you will see it's a similar kind of act taking place around the world in reference to scrap material, copper and things when the price goes up. So the thing about it is that if we don't get certain things correct, a lot of people will just come into this industry and cause a lot of harm. So we understand that, because you see something, when people could leave the streets and just come off the streets and just go and pick up iron anywhere that they see and come to some of our yards, and then there's a handful of people who will practice the right things. Because if you look at what happened Tuesday, it's like you see somebody coming into your yard with all these beams, and the righteous thing to do is to check and see if they have any documents. And if they do have documents for that material, there's no way you're supposed to take that material, because you see the material is good material. So you know that will draw alarm to you. And instead they have documents, you must confirm it based on which part they get it. You cannot go and purchase that material. That is against the scrap rules. You cannot go and pick it up. You cannot purchase it. So I say, wherever the chips fall, let it fall. But there's a lot wrong in this industry that we, as the association, try to correct. Unless we don't correct it, it will continue. And that is why we are asking the government to work with us, to be able to bring certain things to a stop.
Well, Mr. Ferguson, apart from the government, as you mentioned, apart from the government, you seeking assistance from the government to work with you rather than just shutting down the industry completely, the other aspect is that the association held another press conference. I believe Mr. Rondell Fields was there as well, in which you all have indicated that you all had made major decisions as to certain policies that you all would implement to ensure that the reduction in the theft of scrap metals. Could you just explain to us what those policies are? Because, I mean, just stating that you all are doing this while not giving us details is not really helping the situation.
Let me say this, why is we trying to work hard to stop all the steps that are taking place? This is not an easy task, and we continue getting results because we getting through to a lot of yards, not to be careful how we purchase things, and we also getting through to all the bandmen. A lot of bandmen coming to register now, and we start the operation yesterday. We giving people van stickers that you all could recognize them. They're getting a book that they could go out there, and anybody that purchase something for, they will be able to take all the information, and we could, when they come into our yard, we could rectify it and confirm certain things. So we are working hard, and that is why we ask the government to give us we give them a short-term plan and wait until they're ready to regularize the industry, which we said that we will go and put and sticker on the van where the people will notice a collector van, and then they will have to follow certain instructions to able to try to do the right thing. So the people who just want to come into the business and steal and come to the yard, and then the yard put certain restriction on them and how they will purchase certain material. But as I say, we could try doing all these things, but that how it is work out in Trinidad. Some people will follow the rules, some people do not want to follow the rules. But we cannot take action on these people. All we could do sometimes is suspend them from being members of the association. But they could still practice the trade because we don't have the power to stop them.
Well, first, I have a couple of questions. First of all, Mr. Ferguson, I would like to ask you, just so those who don't know, because I think a lot of people might take it for granted, scrap metal, so they buy scrap and they sell it. They might not necessarily understand the benefits that the industry provides the nation. If you could just explain, essentially, all of our, not just industrial metal waste, but our domestic, our home, just households that might have old furniture or appliances made out of metal. It has to go somewhere, and people lament that the landfills are piling up, and this is at least an avenue where some of the waste could be disposed of, correct?
Yes, and I could go so far to let you know, sometimes when you see these vans go out and they see fridge and stove in a drain, they go and pick it up. And let me just use certain areas. So you look like the dump of in Beetham there. Let me tell you something. When we signed treaty that we must not dump steel in the dirt, don't bury it. And when we as scrap dealers go in these areas and remove it, we saving this country from the steel interfering with the water course. All of this thing in the dump of Port of Spain and Plaxan Bay and Arima. We as scrap dealers, let me explain to you. If we get our way the correct way, we does send out the most containers from the port of Port of Spain and Point Lisas. And what we also doing is bringing in a lot of foreign exchange into Trinidad and Tobago, right? Because when the money comes to our banks in Trinidad, we does not get the cash, the U.S. cash. So we have to change it. So the cash is staying into the banks. So all of these things is what we're doing for the country. And then, let me tell you, this industry is the industry that employ a lot of people that cannot help themselves. Meaning that remember, this industry, you don't have to have 5 passes, 3 passes. You could just come in this industry. And what the government don't understand also in this industry is that long as you help, and you help us to bring in more people who have more, bringing more employment in this industry, it will help with the government, because this public assistance that the government has to give so much of poor people, we now will take over some of that because we will hire them that they could get jobs, because it is one of the lowest in the country. We saying work with us to change this 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 industry, because we understand it. We travel a lot in reference to understanding how this industry works. Our problem is we're not getting assistance to change this industry, you know. So we decided we will try to make our change ourselves. Until the government is ready to work with us, we will ready to work with them. But at the meantime, we understand we're facing a challenge because the country under all this sort of pressure with cannot get employment. And it's come like, we want to change this industry from eater food to business life. And that is what we're spreading with baby news, is we want to stop it from an eater food.
Well, one of those changes, because you lamented on the fact that you couldn't really do anything for scrapyards who were not in compliance to enforce the rules. Are scrap iron or scrapyard owners, the association, are you asking the government for a regulatory body that could basically just, if the paperwork is not right, they could just step in and intervene and shut down a yard under suspicion of being doing the wrong thing?
Well, you don't need. Let me explain. If you don't know, at this moment here, whilst you're asking for better thing, a policeman could go into a scrapyard anytime and hold it up, check it out, do anything without a search warrant. All these things is got in place years ago. But what I'm saying, we are looking for better laws to govern our industry. But it don't stop no policeman from going in any yard and checking and doing anything at the moment right now.
Well, Mr. Ferguson, you mentioned previously that in relation to theft, it is certain scrapyards and some of those whom are not your members. If you've made those allegations and if you are sure that is none of your members, have you made reports to the police on these particular scrapyards? Because I'm sure that's one avenue of helping the association, but also helping to try and eliminate this criminal activity.
Let me say this, right? If you're a thief or a bandit, and you go and you pull out TSDT wire, you will not belong to this organization, and you get in itself, then you know which part to go with it. Everybody know who the people purchasing buying it. Everybody know who the people buying the stolen copper, you know. I don't need to even tell the police. I know places in out of Trinidad and Tobago, they could put sting operation. Everybody know where to go and tell it. And let me explain to you all on Trinidad and Tobago, there's only a few yards send out copper out of Trinidad. If there's 8 yards, not all scrap yards send export copper out of Trinidad. The small yards sell to the big ones on them, but it's only a few yards does sell out copper out of Trinidad, export copper. So it's very easy because the Ministry of Trade, they have all the yards that send out copper out of Trinidad. So it's very easy to coordinate something like this to find out who are the people doing it. Why is the people watch the association and say that we not? All we could do is just give them the information. We cannot go and bust down in yards.
But have you given them the information?
Hey, as I say, I had meeting with every single person. I did not come on this program and tell you, as I tell you, Trinidad is a place you also have to be careful of what you say and how you do it. It's very easy for this. If I tell you it's very easy, just how all these people and them pulling on me up and finding the people and them just tell it to. It's very easy. It's not hard. So they can know. I tell them it. They know how to get the information. As I mentioned to you, if it's 7 yards selling out copper, it's very easy. Very easy to find them.
So I would imagine then that now what you would be asking or what you would be informing the public, you're saying that law enforcement should be able to put a stop to this because at the very least they could figure out which yards are buying the stolen copper.
Yes, sir.
So they should.
Let me interject to tell you something, right?
Right.
Let me just say this to you. If you watch from since this thing happened, ask how much yards being busted for buying, for checking out the copper to see if there is buy the copper. I in this business every day, and not one call to say, well, this yard was busted by the police.
Well,
You understand what I'm saying?
uh-huh.
So it's
Yeah.
encouraging people because they're not, no. Some years ago, when it had a kind of a problem, it's not like big as how it was happening. We had worked with the police to stop the step people thieving TSCTY. You know. We had worked with them because at that time they had people who wanted to work with us to make sure it stop it. So I don't know what happened to the people who are in charge now. Why they don't want to work with us? They want to ask us questions and want to do things that it can't work. They want to put us in a position that when we go in the by the commissioner of police and we go up the stairs and we are meeting with them. Before we come back down, people down in penal and they call me or they was inside and they could tell me what we say. It's just a frightening stuff, you know. Everybody feel like you could just go and get information, but go and get information more to love your life too.
Well, I mean, that is
Go ahead, Sean.
that is a fair concern. But I now have to ask, what have you heard from the government then? Because I am very much aware of your repeated calls for the government to work with the scrap iron industry. What have they actually told you? Has it just been silence, or have they more or less brushed you off?
No. No, I can't say that. The Prime Minister put a committee in place. We had give them information. Give them a short-term plan that we will want to see come out, and we say that we will go in front and start working on the short-term plan. But remember, there is a committee that had to go back to the Prime Minister, they had to go to Cabinet. So it's just about 2 weeks now since we met them. So we wait a little bit, but while we waiting, we are trying our best to try to stop this step from taking place. Now, we will know based on information that we have in. It is working a little bit, you know. But as you do this, somebody else try to do something else, and it looks like it ain't working, but it is working because we get into the more scrap yards. Some of them understanding, and we getting people to come and register in a proper way. Some people want to work because they feed their family by this, you know. A lot of people don't want this industry shut down because if the industry do shut down, a lot of people will be able to feed their family. So a lot of people don't want it, but there's some business people who have other things to depend on. Them really don't care. Because if the industry shut down tomorrow, them could go to the other business, you know.
No, Mr. Ferguson.
You understand?
I hear everything you're saying. I know that you've been fighting for the association. I know you've been fighting for the industry. And I hear your arguments. There's so many avenues. I'm just curious to know that you had mentioned earlier, I think you had used the landfill as an example. Do members of the association purchase scrap metals from salvagers who work the Beetham landfill?
Yeah, but there's only one way for them to sell it to is to sell it to us, because in Trinidad they don't have a steel mill, you know, so they will have to sell it to scrap dealers, where we now will prepare it and put it in containers to send it out of Trinidad. So that's the way it works all the time.
But so the reason why I'm asking that is because, you know, salvaging it's been allowed. It's not regulated, but it's against the law. So if members of the association are purchasing from another illegal entity, such as salvagers, which is not permitted by law, isn't that not really helping the association's fight now?
No, I don't think you just didn't hear what I say. Well, then the government will be breaking the law. If they allow that material to stay in the landfill, the government has signed treaty worldwide that not to dump the steel into the earth. That is against world law, you know. We cannot dump steel. So even if we leave it here, the government, when the government signed this treaty, they didn't put nothing in place to make sure that the steel not going into the earth, you know. You have to understand that why you saying we with the cyber breaking the law, I could also tell you that the government will be breaking the law. All right, and it will cost more. You will rather the batteries and steel going that water cost, and you feel that
Mr. Ferguson,
no, I'll be doing a lot to save Trinidad and Tobago from all these this environment and all these other things, you know. So we have to understand that it is not our fault that legislation didn't put in place to make sure that all these things take place.
Well, I know it's not your fault, but my follow-up question would be, is the association, as you say, you're willing to work with the government, you've called on the government to meet with you all so that you all could sort this out. Is the association also making the recommendation to regulate salvagers? Because yes, you're right, legislation is not your fault, but according to our legislation, that's illegal. So are you working with the government to try and regulate that industry as well?
Well, I'm sorry that probably you didn't hear me last night. But if you listened to me last night, we was also talking about the salvagers, where we plan to do with them and try to get them in a way that they could organize a company, let them get to organize a company, because I just explained to you, we want to change the eater food in this industry and make it a business, like also with the salvagers and the people who go around with the van. We have make recommendation for all these things. So it's not something that we're trying alone today. We're just pushing it now a little more further to try to get it done in a more speed at time now. But these are things that we trying from since 2015, you know, to try to get all these things organized. As government come, government go, we still have to work with whoever, you know. And I just say, it's probably how I look or how I speak, or because I didn't come from this prestige school, that is why I had to wait all this time. Because you understand, in Trinidad, the playing field level, you know, the playing field level. Right now, we kicking up the ball up the hill, and when we kick up the ball up the hill, it's falling back and scoring, and we can't do nothing about that, because we on that, we belong to the bottom of the hill and the playing field level. But in this playing field level, we will do more for this industry, and it's just an industry that is just like a stepchild. They don't care about it, you know. And if it was some name that I could call in it would have done change up already. It's because there's Alan Ferguson and Ram Singh and this one and that one. We have no big thing in it. And that's the problem in Trinidad.
Well, Mr. Ferguson, I hear you. By the way, I did see you last night at Signature Hall. But nevertheless, thank you very much for answering the questions on the program this morning. So that's all the time.
Yes, and I want to make the last call for Trinidad and Tobago to understand we at the association is making all the efforts to try to stop all the steps that are taking place, and that is why we start a drive going around Trinidad, and we will move around Trinidad sensitizing the public and how everything's work in this industry until we could get rid of this all the steps taking place. We will work with our yards, we will work with the government, with any organization to make sure we stop this step from taking place.
Well,
I want to thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, sir, for being here to speak to us.
Yes, sir.
Keep well, sir. All the very best to you and the association. Well, folks, that was Mr. Alan Ferguson, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Scrap Iron Dealers Association, once more pleading with those who are stealing metals, not even scrap metals, metals. He's pleading with them to stop, and to members of his association, be very, very careful who you're purchasing metals from. Folks, we're going to break for news on the hour here now, and when we return, well, Sean will give you the question of the day, and we will open up the phone lines. Stay tuned.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw,
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The Mary Immaculate Prayer Group and Friends presents its prayer breakfast on August 31st in aid of Monsignor Christian Pereira. The prayer breakfast begins from 9 a.m. at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Cost is only $200. Come support the Cup of Gratitude in aid of Monsignor Pereira, August 31st.
Tickets are available at the parish office of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception and the parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Thank you very much to Denise St. Clair for news on the hour. Sean Michael Small, you're still with us, sir?
Yep.
Excellent. Somehow or the
Unfortunately, nobody stole the wire providing me my internet connection this morning, so I'm able to still be here.
Oh, so you're last on the list then?
It seems so.
Because somebody stole WSN's copper wire about 2 months ago, and about every day since then we've been calling TSTT, and Every day we get the same response, call us back in 24 to 48 hours. Yeah.
So just to go back to what Mr. Ferguson said, where it seems as though, well, already non-energy industries are red-headed stepchilds in TNT. But when he said that, it seemed as though nobody necessarily cared, right? And I think one of the key things is the stakeholders like TSTT, up until the node last weekend was vandalized. I wonder if they cared about the copper lines that were connected to residents and businesses. And to me, the answer probably was no. They did not care. And that's one of the reasons why. Again, so you don't care about something, you allow laws to be broken unchecked. Don't be surprised when it escalates into something that might go after something you do care about. And I guess it goes back to my original point, where, we can't allow, it might seem small, but when we lose respect for the rule of law, as our caller from Chaguanas will probably call in to reiterate again, these are the results. It only gets worse. But to the question of the day, basically what we're asking is, do you think the scrap iron industry is regulated and the Scrap Iron Dealers Association has done all within their powers in eliminating the theft of scrap metals across the nation? All within their powers. And personally, I would argue maybe they have. Maybe they have done just about everything that they can. Because it was chilling when Mr. Ferguson pointed out, when he did go to speak to the Commissioner of Police, before he even came outside, people already knew that he went in and were asking him, what did he say?
And that, Sean, as a businessman, especially as the president of an association, you're trying to work with the government, you're trying to work with the police. At least that's what you've stated. That is very, very scary, Sean. Imagine that not to try and get too sidetracked, but take a look at the shooting yesterday at the store, Fats International, where the owner was sitting down. Somebody walked in, pointed a gun at him, wanted to steal his gold chain, and he fought back. He fought back. He was shot in the chest. Conflicting reports as to his condition. But imagine that. You as a business owner in your business, conducting your business, want to do it the best possible way within the confines of the law, and at no point in time are you aware of whether you're a target. Imagine he's stating that I walked into the office of the Commissioner of Police, and by the time I walked out, I got information that people were very much well aware that I was there, and they wanted to know what I was doing.
I mean, the flip side is I do have to ask if the police is aware of methodologies, procedures of how to communicate with people without necessarily marking them as a target. But that's a conversation for another day.
Or ask yourself whether or not the police are involved. I mean, yes, you're asking a very, very important question, Sean, very pertinent. But, I mean, in our society now, and what we've grown so accustomed to seeing, ask yourself whether or not the police themselves are involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate question, and I guess the only people who, at the end of the day, the people involved more or less have themselves to blame to some degree or another, right? I'm not saying that all police are bad and are responsible for this, but everybody who had a hand, so that includes members of the public and politicians, who had a hand in allowing this little law to be broken, that small law to be broken, another small law to be circumvented, a bit of minor corruption in this office, state office or ministry office, etc. All of these things add up, and this is what we're ending up with.
Well,
and it's not just in this situation. I am sure we could say this on multiple different industries and examples.
Before you get into those multiple examples, we do have a caller online with us.
Yes.
We have a caller online with us from Chaguanas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
The answer to your question of the day is the obvious one. No regulations and laws are enforced, and that's the problem. Yesterday you had an interesting program with no questions and a number of misleading statements. People talk about black people can't go to the banks and get a loan. The banks have always have a consistent policy on the collateral, and you must remember we had 3 banks here operated by government who decided to follow your speaker and give out loans on Easy to, and the three went bankrupt. That was the Workers' Bank, the Cooperative Bank, and I can't remember the name of the other one. If you're giving a story, give the whole thing. Don't just give the part that supports the opposition. Then somebody talk about the sugar welfare legislation giving houses to people in the sugar industry. That is not true. What it is, there was a lot of laws that dealt with housing and loans for people. In fact, NHA law was passed before the sugar welfare loan. And what the sugar welfare loan did is placed a levy on sugar export to finance housing schemes for sugar workers. They got loans to build up property. What was great about the sugar welfare scheme is that give what you call a mortgage lease, in that when you pay off for the lease, the property was transferred to you at a nominal sum. And that is why you have things like NHA, people not paying, because there is no incentive, and nobody checks these things in the field to see why we have these problems. You mentioned a conflict with the AG this morning. There is no conflict. The AG is to advise the government on what is the law. Right? That is a full stop. Right? He cannot advise them against what is the law. Somebody talk about arrival day. And the reason why it was Indian arrival day was a simple reason. The Indians in Trinidad have something to celebrate about arriving in Trinidad. People bad talk in dictatorship. My grandfather and my uncle came from India, and although they had the opportunity to go back, they never entertained it because life over here was by far better. Africans, on the other hand, have nothing to celebrate about arriving here. Right? Another caller talk about Nelson
Very quickly,
Street
caller.
people
Very
don't
quickly.
have a deed to go to get a mortgage. And again, he mix up everything. There are people on Nelson Street who have leases, and they can go to the bank. There are people who don't. If you're renting a property, you can't get a deed to go and get a loan on a rented property. And these are the things that you need to go. If you are to retain content capital, you have to get to the bottom of it. Any questions, gentlemen?
No, Professor. Thank you.
Do we have a caller?
Yes, we do.
Do we have a next caller?
Yes, we do.
Yeah? Okay.
Right.
We'll respond off air. Sorry, Professor.
Jeez. All right, folks. We need to take a quick break here on the program, and when we return, we'll continue the conversation.
What happened? Which caller? The second caller? I lost audio at some point. Okay.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point. We do apologize for that very abrupt cut in programming. But folks, we do have a call on the line with us from Dabadi. Okay, it seems as though that we have an issue there. I'm not so sure if it's the telephone line from the caller from Dabadi. Caller, are you with us? Okay, I think we've lost the caller. All right, so sorry about that. Professor from Chaguanas, well, everything that you've stated there, hopefully that I can pass that on to those who were on the panel yesterday. Maybe they can digest all of it and give a response to everything that you've claimed. But Sean, yes, you had a question, Sean.
Well, not so much a question. There was something I did want to challenge the professor on, and that is
Sean,
with regards...
I apologize for having to cut you. Apparently the caller is on the line with us from WE. Hello, good morning, caller.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
I think I was having a little technical this morning, and I mean that noted that, you know, that from time to time you will. Thanks for taking my call, though.
Sure.
First of all, I want to commend you guys for having a wonderful program. And I know that you all prepare a lot to give us a good program on morning. That's why I started listening and I continue to listen.
Thank you, caller.
You're welcome. However, I am a stickler for discipline.
Yeah.
And something happened yesterday that I said I would not mention it, but I have to mention it with respect to when the call was made for the break, and it was time for the break, and Louis decided that he wanted to continue. I think that we can't be just speaking in one side of our mouth and not practicing on the other side. Louis could have waited until you all came back from the break. End the text. I don't want to go further than that. With respect to the discussion this morning, with respect to the scrap iron, with respect to the case, we have quite a lot of problems with the police service. And it is all about leadership and management within the service that I realize that issue after issue keep propping up, and we talk about it on a daily basis, and we try to look at a solution for it. Gentlemen, I think even with the scrap iron, with respect to the case of where the AG is not appealing the matter anymore, I think all of this happened from leadership in the police service. And it's a bit ironic that you all didn't call on who was the leader at the time of the police service. And I think was Gary.
Yeah. No, caller, you're right. I think we did mention the police because we said we know that it's the police that have to go. But you're right. You're making a good point.
Gary's on this program from time to time, and I mean, and he might have made a boo-boo with respect to that issue where he was fighting the media personally, and the service came into play. You know, so I think we need better leadership in the service, and although McDonald Jacob is trying his best, I think that he is still on a learning curve, and the police really need to be careful with respect to how they exercise the operations. Gentlemen, lovely program again, and thanks for the opportunity to make my contribution.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Sean, before I respond to the caller from Dabadi, I don't know if you'd like to continue with your response to the caller from Chaguanas.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll be honest, I actually didn't even really bother to consider Gary and who was commissioner during the incident. I was more focused on the acting commissioner at the time that was the subject that started the whole thing going off. So that's a thank you for calling us out on not mentioning that point. I do think it is pertinent, all things considered. With that said, Professor, I know you're going to get mad with me. My thing is, with the AG, the problem is, yes, he advises the government about law. He represents the states. Therefore, he also represents the people. Now, in a matter such as AV drilling, where the government seems to have a vested interest or seems to have a certain amount of connections to the defendant, who is on the other side of the matter from the state, when the government has those connections to that individual, the government's lawyer, the member of cabinet, the AG, he's not just a legal advisor. He's not just the lawyer to the boardroom. He sits on the board. It's difficult to say that there is no conflict of interest there, because at the very least, in a matter like ANV, and you could say with anything even remotely similar, where it seems as though political interests and social interests do not necessarily converge, we do have to say, well, it doesn't matter. It just needs the perception that there could be a conflict of interest
Sean,
with regards to these things.
And I think you've raised a very valuable point, because my interpretation of what the professor was stating was not necessarily one who was oblivious, but one who was trying to point out what is idealistic.
What it's supposed to be.
Yes, and I can only hope that is what the professor was trying to state. Because to then state it has nothing to do with the AG is supposed to advise the government or the state. No, sir. We're not saying that's incorrect. But as mentioned by Sean and previously by Karen, the Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General, is not separate to the government.
We are based on the Westminster system, and I believe in the UK they removed the AG from cabinet. Is that the correct move? Should it be limited to that? I don't know. All I do know is that too many questions comes up with regards to the role of the AG and how it's being executed.
And again, politicizing law. I mean, law is politics and politics is law, right? But there is supposed to be a separation. There is supposed to be a separation, a fine line that is. And, very funny enough, I mentioned it earlier, the Office of the Attorney General is just another avenue of manipulation for government interest and not necessarily the interest of TNT. Now, in relation to what the caller from Davide stated, he made a very good point. We need better leadership. I would go on to say not just within the TTPS, the police service, but generally all around.
Yeah.
We need better leadership in state boards so that they run more efficiently. We need better leadership in private entities, because I've gotten many reports. People have actually spoken to me about how unfairly that they're being treated by private entities who are continuing to use COVID-19 policies against them. For example, if you contract COVID-19 in one organization, I don't want to mention the name right now on air because, again, for legal purposes, but one individual mentioned to me, Sean, if you contract COVID-19 in this organization and you have to stay home, because you remember you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, they actually do not pay you. They do not give you sick leave, right? If you stay home, it is considered that you're taking time off without pay. That's one aspect of it. We need better leadership within our opposition. Better leadership within the opposition might mean a lot more for TNT. Better leadership within the government would mean far greater things for TNT. So we need better leadership all around, not only within the TTPS, but to the genesis of your point, caller. I hear you, and I do agree with you.
There's an interesting phenomena in how our work hierarchy and how our professional standards are structured. And I think in most entities, whether it is a political organization or party, whether it is a private business, whether it is a ministerial office or a state entity's administrative office or what have you, what do entry-level people, what is being enforced? What is looked for? People who will do as they're told, right? We just want people to hire people who will do what they're told. You're not paid to think when you now enter an organization. You're not necessarily allowed to think when you are the lowest man on the totem pole of a political party. The unfortunate fact, though, is that while the initial part of these organizations, they filter out the free thinkers. They filter out the individuals who want to kind of move a little bit to their own beat, who are creative with their problem solving. It to some extent, it either causes those individuals to be removed or it's beaten out of them. And what do we get rising to the top? People who technically do not necessarily have the type of skills to be leaders, to be problem solvers. Now, that's not to say that we don't, yes, some of our leaders, they are intelligent. But I think the Darwinian environment that our society puts our young people through, it really makes it things difficult for creative, for dynamic, charismatic, well-meaning individuals to rise to the top. What we get are ambitious, to some extent power-hungry, to some extent self-serving individuals that rise to the top, because that's the systems upon which our economy and our government, for better or worse, is built.
Sure.
And I think we need to realize that democracy and capitalism are not that old. Humanity is old. These things are still relatively young. And as society continues to advance, the systems need to advance with them.
Sure, the systems may need to advance with them, I hear you, but the systems will not advance if the people do not advance. When you take and I use that term to the extent that I keep mentioning, that you have to open up your mind a little bit more and stop being trapped within this mindset that it has to be this way, it is only this way, it is only this individual, it is only this entity. No, that cannot be the case at all, especially for Trinidad and Tobago. And you mentioned intelligence, Sean. I don't think that we have unintelligent individuals within the walls of Parliament. I think we have a lot of intelligent people, but it's how you grade it. Because you have those who have great book sense and could speak their minds. For example, the former Attorney General, now Minister of Local Government. You have those with absolutely no book sense and common sense. I'm trying to think of an example, and that's kind of difficult. And then you have those with no sense at all.
I could think of examples for those last two, but I don't want to say it out lest somebody accuse me of having a bias one way or the other. Because I could think both sides.
But this is the thing. Book sense is not going to be the only thing that sees us through. Common sense alone is not going to see us through. You need to have a balance. And you mix all that in with critical thinking, constructive minds. My friend, that's a formula for success. Because we're not always going to get it right. But if you have all those individuals together, whether it be opposition, whether it be that in the helm of government, all that together, things could be a lot better than where we're at right now.
Look at our education system. Book sense. What is that? That essentially is learning by rote. Right? It's not that I learn how to multiply 2 times 2. It's that I learn the result. I memorize it. I could regurgitate information. That doesn't necessarily develop me to deal with situations that are new, that have never been encountered before. That's more or less how our examinations, that's what they're pushing, SEA, CAPE, what have you. That's what we get out of our societies with regards to not just the workplace and education, but the entire thing put together for individual development.
Before we have to break,
I know we have to close, but I want to reiterate the point. It's not just book sense and common sense, though, because common sense, while not necessarily common, is widespread enough. And book sense, we train our people with book sense. The missing element is the critical thinking. Critical thinking to come up with innovative ideas, to look at a problem and not just do the same business as usual. Notice that term, because that's what gets us into trouble. Most of our political leadership could only do business as usual because they don't know how to do anything else.
I just reiterate the point that you're stating by mentioning that if you look at in primary school or even in secondary school and you're looking at mathematics, right? A simple example such as that, I was told that you can have the wrong answer, but always show how you got to that answer. Your working and the methods, the formulas always shows that, because that is what's critical at the end of the day. Your answer could be wrong and we could show you how to correct it, but we want to see how you think. We want to see what you did to get to that point. So that's a key part of it as well. But Sean Michael Small, listen, thank you very much for being with us this morning, though via Zoom. It is a pleasure to see you and to have you for the conversations. And some good news for you. The 74-room Comforting Hotel opens today in Scarborough. So more rooms on the island.
Not enough flights.
Not enough flights. More
That's going to be
rooms.
one empty hotel.
It is going to be. But folks, listen, that's Mr. Sean Michael Small. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Points here on WESN. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.